why the Gospel of Thomas is not represented in the Bible. One of the things that needs to be understood is that because there were 12 different ideas of what the gospel should look like, there were a lot of diverse viewpoints. There seemed to develop two major factions: the Arius group and the Trinitarian group. The Trinitarian group basically had Paul and Peter, James, and several of the other ones. The Arius group had Mary, had Thomas, had Philip, and several others. As a result, there were arguments between these two factions. When Constantine, the Emperor of Rome, decided in his infinite wisdom of political expedience to adopt the Christian religion, he decided that this would be a really great way of consolidating his empire under one religion. He decided that he was the one who would be deciding who the Pope was, the leader of the Christian Church, the representative of the dogma of the Christians. The only problem was Constantine was using secular ideas to choose these popes. He was not inspired by God. And basically the popes of these two different factions switched out constantly. He changed them very often, and so whoever was in charge at the moment would be the faction that was the Christian Church. If you weren't in the Pope's seat, then the other faction was considered heretical. Well, at some point, the emperor decided that it was time to consolidate everything. This was like 300 years after Jesus died, and they really needed to make a decision about what they really believed and write it down. Well, the faction that was in charge at that time, the Pope that was on the seat at that moment, was a Trinitarian Pope. There had been a lot of contention between the two factions, so there wasn't a lot of common ground at this point, and a lot of hard feelings in between the groups. The Trinitarian group decided that anything that was written by an Arius group member would not be accepted as part of the official writings for the Christian Church. They pored over tons and tons of writings. There were many, many Gospels that were rejected as not meeting the criteria of their idea of what Jesus said. And it got narrowed down to basically what is in the New Testament now. As a result, anything that was not written down and codified and decided that this was official was considered heretical. Now, most of the other writings were written down by this time, and they were stored in monasteries that were considered sort of freelance. They wanted to know everything. They weren't saying, okay, these we like, these we don't. They were studying all of the Gospels, and as a result they had copies of them. Some of these monasteries were burned. Some of them were looted. Some of them were just utterly destroyed. Out of fear that these other Gospels would disappear, many of the copies were allocated to jars and hidden in caves and desert, etc. And that is why the Gospel of Thomas retained in this jar that was found in a cave, Nag Hammadi, to be found later by the Egyptian who found him. It is ironic that we can read the Gospel of Thomas with new eyes without any redactions. It is a rare gift that God has given us. I'm glad you've been able to read